At 60, I had the life most people dream about. Luxury condo overlooking the lake, a retirement party with champagne toasts, a LinkedIn feed flooded with admiration. I was the man who always showed up at board meetings, closed deals in Tokyo, and made Forbes's list before I hit 50. But none of that prepared me for the 5 words my 9-year-old granddaughter whispered, eyes wide with confusion. "Why didn't you come to my play?" In that moment, the applause from my retirement faded. I had spent decades building an empire, but I couldn't recall the color of her costume, the date of the event, or even if I had replied to the invite. I had trophies in my office, but none in my heart. My daughter had stopped asking years ago. My ex-wife had signed the divorce papers the same day I was honored as CFO of the year. I thought I had sacrificed for them, but I had only succeeded in becoming a guest in my own family. That question, innocent as it seemed, tore open a truth I had buried under years of conference calls and frequent flyer miles. What followed was not redemption overnight, but a brutal, uncertain climb back toward meaning. If you've ever chased success and lost sight of what matters most, this story isn't just mine. It might still be yours to rewrite. I stood at the head of the long mahogany table, the soft clinking of cutlery and champagne glasses filling the private dining hall. The company had rented out the entire rooftop restaurant to celebrate my retirement. After 35 years in finance, 22 of them with the same firm, I was finally stepping down. My assistant handed me a crystal plaque etched with my name, James Peterson, a legacy of leadership. My CEO toasted to my foresight, the junior analysts cried about losing their mentor, and even the board chair cracked a rare joke about my inhuman work ethic. I nodded, smiled, gave the rehearsed speech, thanked the company, saluted the sacrifices, mentioned my late nights and early mornings like badges of honor. Everyone laughed at my story about the Tokyo negotiation that saved the merger. Everyone clapped when I said I was looking forward to time with family. No one noticed that there wasn't a single family member in the room. I rode the elevator down alone, plaque in hand, the late autumn wind greeting me with a chill that crawled into my collar. My driver offered to take me anywhere, to a cigar lounge, to dinner, even to the beach house. I told him to go home. I needed to be alone. The penthouse echoed when I opened the door. The lights came on automatically, revealing a gleaming space of glass and chrome, untouched by warmth. I popped open a bottle of champagne someone had gifted me, a vintage too expensive to drink alone, but I drank it anyway. 1 glass, then 2. Then I walked over to the window and stared down at the glittering city I had helped fund, scale, and grow. Somewhere in that sprawl lived my daughter Sarah. Somewhere else, my ex-wife Claire. And a few miles away, my 9-year-old granddaughter, Emily. None of them had been at my party. I told myself they were busy, that they had school or work, or maybe they just didn't want to sit through another corporate send-off. But deep down, I knew. I'd spent decades choosing rooms like that rooftop restaurant over dining tables with them. My face was on a dozen annual reports, but absent from every holiday photo. The next afternoon, I drove out to Sarah's for a family dinner. Claire had organized it weeks ago, in some effort to acknowledge my retirement. We hadn't shared a house in over 15 years, but she remained the bridge between me and our daughter. Her texts were formal now, with no warmth, just logistics. Time, address, bring wine. The door opened before I could knock. Emily rushed out in socks, flinging her arms around my waist. I held her close, inhaling the scent of bubblegum and shampoo. But she didn't look up. She just mumbled, "Hi, Grandpa," and darted back into the living room. Inside, the house smelled of lasagna. Sarah gave me a nod from the kitchen, stirring a pot on the stove. Claire was setting the table, talking to Emily about school. No one asked about the party. No one congratulated me. At dinner, the clatter of forks filled the silence. I tried to make conversation about the retirement, my plans to travel, maybe buy a boat. Claire gave polite nods. Sarah scrolled her phone between bites. Emily pushed peas around her plate. Then she looked up and said it. "Grandpa, why didn't you come to my play?" It was so soft, almost drowned out by the scrape of Sarah's chair, but everyone heard it. I blinked. The table froze. Claire looked at Sarah, who looked at Emily, who looked straight at me. "I had a client meeting that day," I started to say. Then I realized I didn't even remember when the play was. "I was the grandpa," Emily added. "It was a school play about families. I had lines. I wore a sweater like yours." The air thinned. I tried to smile. "That sounds amazing. I'm sure you were great." She shrugged and returned to her peas. Claire cleared her throat. "James, would you like more wine?" Later that night, back at my empty condo, I searched online. It took me 10 minutes to find the school's Facebook page, another 5 to scroll through the album of the winter play. There she was, Emily, in an oversized gray sweater and round glasses, standing beside cardboard props that resembled a living room. Her arms were stretched wide, her mouth open mid-speech, her eyes scanning the crowd. I played the video. She said, "My grandpa used to read me stories. He smelled like cinnamon and books." The audience chuckled, "But now he's always busy. I wonder if he remembers my name." My name wasn't in the program. Her real grandfather had become just a costume, and I hadn't even noticed. There's a photo framed in my office, now boxed and stacked in storage, of me holding Sarah the day she was born. I'm wearing a hospital gown over a crisp white shirt and tie. Claire looks exhausted but radiant. Sarah is swaddled, her face scrunched in a grimace that made the nurse laugh. I remember the photographer snapping the picture. I remember thinking, this is the start of something big. I was right, just not in the way I imagined. What I don't remember is what happened after that moment. Claire tells me I stayed an hour, kissed her forehead, and left for a flight to Houston. I had a meeting with a pharmaceutical client about a merger. I called that night, left a voicemail. Didn't talk to her until 3 days later. But there are photos. So many photos. Me holding Sarah at 1, 2, 5 years old. Me at her piano recital. Me in front of her science fair project. Every image, a snapshot of presence. A lie. Because I don't remember her first steps. I don't remember what song she played. I don't remember what her science fair topic was. I remember the stock prices that week. I remember flying to Zurich. I remember the firm's Christmas party where I landed 3 new accounts. I built a scrapbook of fatherhood with no pages filled. For years, I believed I was doing the right thing, that my absence was temporary, strategic, that I was investing in her future. I paid for the best schools, the best doctors, the best everything. I called every Friday, even if it was just a voicemail. I sent gifts. I even had a folder in my email labeled family, with reminders to send birthday cards, book vacations, RSVP to events. It was all carefully scheduled, efficient, loveless. Last week, after dinner with Sarah and Emily, I walked home past the old park near our first apartment. I sat on a bench and watched a man push his daughter on a swing. She laughed, begging for more. He ran back and forth like a fool, arms flailing, but his grin was pure. Uncalculated. I tried to remember if I had ever pushed Sarah on a swing, I couldn't. The next morning, I got coffee with Bob Jensen, an old friend from grad school. We hadn't seen each other in years, but he heard I'd retired and insisted we catch up. He looked exactly the same. Jeans, hiking boots, always carrying a book under one arm. He taught community college now, had never made six figures, never left the state. But he smiled like he didn't care. "Still the numbers guy, huh?" he teased, nodding at my Rolex. "How's post-retirement life treating you?" I shrugged, quieter than expected. "You earned it," he said. "You were always the smartest in the room. Built your empire. I saw your face in a magazine last year. Finance titan of the Midwest." I laughed dryly. That was the year I finalized my second divorce. He sipped his coffee. "My daughter asked me to walk her down the aisle next month. Said I'm her hero." That landed like a punch. "She's getting married?" I asked, trying to focus. Bob smiled. "Yeah, small ceremony, backyard thing. She's marrying a social worker. I told her I couldn't afford much. She said, 'Dad, all I want is for you to be there.' That's it. Just be there." I stared at my cup. My hand was trembling. He leaned back. "You know, James, you're a legend in your field. But she's my field. Every day, every game, every bad report card. I didn't build an empire. I built memories." On the walk home, I checked my calendar. Emily's birthday was sometime in May. Or was it April? I opened my phone, scrolled through texts from Sarah. Nothing. I searched emails. Found a happy birthday Emily from an auto-scheduler I'd set up years ago. I didn't know my granddaughter's birthday. That night, I pulled out an old photo album Claire had given me during our divorce. She said it was, "for when you finally slow down." I never opened it. Until now. There was a photo of Sarah in ballet shoes, age 6. Another of her in braces, holding a trophy. One of her asleep in the back seat, head against Claire's shoulder. I wasn't in most of them. And when I was, I looked distracted. On the phone, half smiling, watching the camera instead of her. The lie was beautiful, carefully curated. A father always there, at least in pictures. A family man on paper. But paper burns, and I was holding a box of ashes. It had taken me weeks to learn the name of Emily's school, buried somewhere in one of Sarah's offhand remarks. I jotted it down on a napkin and called 3 times to ask about the winter showcase schedule before someone told me the event was at 6 p.m. Thursday. Auditorium doors open at 5:30. I wore my best blazer. Bought Emily a bouquet of daisies, her favorite according to an old photo Sarah had posted years ago. I arrived early, stood in line with other parents, clutching the flowers like a nervous date. It had been years since I'd set foot in a school gym. When I reached the entrance, a volunteer handed out programs. I scanned it. Emily's name was there, listed under narrators. I smiled. She had a speaking part. The woman at the door asked for my name. I said it proudly. She frowned. "I'm sorry, sir. Your name's not on the approved guest list." "I'm her grandfather," I said, gesturing to the program. She hesitated, then called over a security guard. He walked over, firm but polite. "I'm going to have to ask you to step aside," he said. "Only individuals approved by the parent or guardian are permitted." "I'm her family." "I understand, sir, but your name isn't here." "I'm not trying to cause trouble," I said quietly. "I just want to see my granddaughter perform." The guard nodded sympathetically, but didn't budge. "Please contact the parent directly." I didn't call Sarah. I knew she wouldn't pick up. I handed the daisies to the volunteer and walked back to my car, past the rows of minivans and SUVs, the muffled music and excited chatter inside. I sat behind the wheel, hands on the steering, the silence pressing against my chest like a weight. Later that night, I checked the school's portal. Some events were uploaded for family members. Emily stood on stage, a little nervous, narrating the story of a family through the seasons. She described grandparents who told bedtime stories, who sat in the front row and clapped even when the kid got the lines wrong. Then came the line, "My grandpa buys me things, but I don't know if he's real. Mom says he used to be." The audience laughed, assuming it was part of the script. I knew better. I didn't call Sarah that night, but the next day she called me. "Did you go to the show?" she asked, her voice sharp. "I just wanted to see her." "I took you off the form for a reason, Dad." "You blocked me?" "Emily doesn't know you. She sees your gifts, not your face. She asked about me. She asked if you were real. That's not curiosity, Dad. That's confusion. I want to fix things. You can't fix this with flowers." She hung up. A few days later, Claire invited me to dinner, a rare occurrence. She said Sarah and Emily would be there. I dressed carefully, practiced what I'd say in the mirror. Dinner was quiet at first. Claire had made roast chicken. Emily sat beside Sarah, drawing in a notebook. I asked gently, "What are you drawing?" "A house," she said. "But it's missing a room. That's where you were supposed to be." My fork clinked against the plate. After Emily went upstairs, Sarah cleared her throat. "I've been meaning to say this." I waited. "The day I graduated college," she said slowly. "Mom sat in the crowd alone. Everyone else had family cheering, holding signs. You sent me a card." "I had a shareholder meeting," I said. "I sent flowers, a check." Claire looked at me. "Do you remember what else happened that day?" I blinked. "You mean?" She nodded. "I filed for divorce that morning." Silence settled like dust. Sarah added, "I watched Mom sign it. She cried. Then she straightened up and came to see me walk the stage alone." "I didn't know," I whispered. Claire smiled, but it wasn't kind. "Of course you didn't. You were in Forbes that day, top 50 executives to watch." I remembered now. The article, the interview, the photograph they took of me in my corner office. "I didn't mean to." "You didn't mean not to either." I stood to leave, but Sarah stopped me. "Sit down," she said. "Running is what you used to do. You don't get to run anymore." I sat. She slid over a small handmade card. It was from Emily. Inside it said, "You can still come back, but no more just watching from the window." My hands trembled. I had watched from the window my entire life. Through glass offices, plain windows, hotel lobbies, always just outside of what mattered. And now, my granddaughter was asking me, inviting me, to step inside. The day I sold my shares, the market closed higher than expected. The advisor congratulated me on timing it perfectly, but I barely heard him. I walked out of the building, portfolio lighter by millions, heart heavier than ever. For the first time in decades, I wasn't thinking about ROI, retirement assets, or capital gains. I was thinking about my granddaughter's notebook drawing of a house missing a room. Me. The next morning, I put the lakefront penthouse on the market. I rented a modest one-bedroom unit 15 minutes from Sarah's house. The ceilings were lower, the paint chipped near the baseboards, and the water pressure in the shower was a joke. But it was quiet and close. I bought a set of note cards, plain cream paper, elegant cursive font, my name embossed on top. Then, every Sunday, I sat at my little kitchen table and wrote to Emily. Sometimes 2 paragraphs, sometimes 2 pages. I told her stories about when her mom was young. I drew little cartoons. I described the snow falling on my windowsill, the squirrel that visited my porch, the dog that barked every morning at 6 a.m. I slipped each letter into an envelope, addressed it carefully, stamped it, and dropped it in the mailbox like I was sending part of myself away. And every week, I waited for a reply, a text, a visit. None came. On the fourth Sunday, Sarah called, not to talk, just to inform. She reads the letters, she said, but she hasn't written back because she doesn't know if she should. I swallowed hard. Why not? Because she's 9, and she thinks you're showing up now because you have nothing else to do. That hit me like a stone to the chest. She asked me, Mom, would Grandpa still want to talk to me if he got a new job again? I said nothing. What could I say? Keep writing, Sarah added. I think she wants to believe this is real, but she's scared. I thanked her and hung up. That night, I sat at my table and stared at the blank card for over an hour. Then I wrote, Dear Emily, I understand why you're not writing back. I'm not going anywhere. I'll keep writing even if you never do. Because now, I don't want you to remember me as the man who came only when it was easy. I want you to know me as the one who stayed. I sent it, and I kept sending more. Days turned into weeks. Then, one Thursday afternoon, there was a knock at my door. I opened it, and there she was. Emily standing with her backpack slung over one shoulder, hair messy from school, clutching a folded piece of paper in one hand. Her face was unreadable. I blinked. Emily. She didn't smile, didn't step forward. Hi, she said, almost bored. Do you still have that Lego dragon you promised me 2 years ago? I blinked again, searching my memory. Mom said you bought it but forgot to give it to me. I nodded slowly. I think I did. It's probably still in a closet somewhere. Can I get it? I stepped aside. She walked in like she was visiting a stranger, not her grandfather. Her eyes didn't scan the space for comfort. They scanned for the box. I found it in a storage bin, unopened. Handed it to her like an offering. She didn't say thank you. Just looked at it, then at me. I read your letters. I'm glad, I said softly. She shifted the dragon box in her hands. Some of them were funny, some were weird. I smiled faintly. That sounds about right. She looked at me, really looked, for the first time. Do you mean it? That you're not going anywhere? I mean it, I said, voice rough. Even if you never invite me in, I'll still be here. She nodded slowly. Okay, bye. Then she turned and left. I stood at the door long after it closed, my hand still on the knob. The silence in the apartment seemed to breathe with me. And then, quietly, without warning, I sank to the floor and cried. 30 years of holding back, of pushing forward, of telling myself that emotions were distractions, weaknesses, things to be scheduled around. And yet, in that moment, I was undone by a 9-year-old girl asking for a toy I forgot. It wasn't about the Lego dragon. It was about being remembered for forgetting. I cried until the floor was damp beneath my cheek, until the tightness in my chest loosened just enough to let in something new. Shame, yes, but also something that felt almost like peace, or the first step toward it. Later that evening, I found a drawing tucked inside the storage bin with the dragon. It was old, faded. Sarah had made it when she was 7. A stick figure family, Mom, Sarah, and a tall man in a suit with a briefcase. No eyes, just a line for a mouth. I stared at it for a long time. Then I took out a pen and wrote my name in the corner, like signing a confession. Then I wrote another letter. The flyer came in the mail, tucked among bills and coupons. A printed sheet from Emily's school announcing a fundraising fair. Baked goods, raffle, used books, performances from the choir. I held it for a moment, unsure if it was sent to me by mistake or some subtle olive branch. I went. I arrived early, parked far enough to avoid awkward greetings, wore a plain jacket, and kept my head down as I walked through the school gates. I bought cookies from the PTA table, a used copy of Charlotte's Web, and sat in the back row of the folding chairs near the playground stage. The sun was gentle that day. The laughter of children was sharper than I remembered. When the choir filed on stage, I spotted Emily in the third row. Her hair was in a ponytail, a red scarf tied around her neck. She was scanning the crowd with practiced disinterest until her eyes passed over the last row, then paused. I froze. She didn't smile, didn't wave like a child seeing her favorite person, but she raised her hand, just a little, and gave the smallest, shyest wave. It lasted a second, maybe two, but it was real. I sat perfectly still, afraid to break the moment, then nodded just once. That night, Sarah texted, "Dinner Sunday, just us three if you want." No emojis, no warmth, but an invitation nonetheless. I arrived early, again, and stood on the porch for several minutes before ringing the bell. Sarah opened the door. She wore an apron and smelled faintly of tomato sauce. "Emily's setting the table," she said. "Dinner's almost ready." Inside, the lights were warm, the music soft. No tension yet, just quiet. We sat, the three of us. Sarah had made lasagna, her mother's recipe, if I remembered right. Emily avoided my gaze at first, then offered me the garlic bread basket. Progress. Halfway through the meal, I cleared my throat. Sarah looked up sharply. "No past." I stopped. "Tonight's about now," she added. "Honey, if you want this to work, don't drag in what broke it." I nodded. Understood. We ate the rest of dinner in fragile peace, like walking a tightrope over thin ice. But it held. When Emily got up to clear the plates, I offered to help. Sarah hesitated, then shrugged. "If you want to try the garden, the weeds are winning." I followed her to the backyard. It was overgrown, roses choked by ivy, soil cracked in places. I rolled up my sleeves and began pulling, digging, patting down earth like I had done with my mother years ago in our cramped Milwaukee yard. I told Sarah about the marigolds my mom used to plant each spring, about how she believed flowers carried stories, that if you listened close, they whispered the seasons back to you. Sarah worked beside me, silent. An hour passed, maybe more. When we finally stood to stretch, Emily stood at the door watching us. She tilted her head and said, "Mom, Grandpa makes the garden smell like memories." Sarah's breath caught, just for a moment. Then she walked inside. The next day, I returned with a tray of new seedlings, lavender, rosemary, and daisies. No invitation, just quiet work. I kept coming back every weekend. No long conversations, just shared space, soil, and silence. Then one morning, when I arrived with mulch, I noticed something new on the living room wall. An old family photo, long forgotten. There I was. Claire, Sarah, me, and baby Sarah in my arms. It had been taken when she turned 1. I remembered the sweater I wore, the way Claire had fussed over the angle of the light. It had sat in a drawer for years. Now it hung beside newer photos. Sarah and Emily at a pumpkin patch, Claire and Emily painting, even a candid of Emily reading under a blanket fort. But mine was there, Not as a statement, just included. A few days later, I brought Emily a small notebook. To draw in, I said, or write, or just scribble. She took it, no thank you. But she didn't put it aside either. At dinner that evening, she said, "Grandpa, do you still know how to make silly pancakes?" "I might," I smiled. "Like with chocolate chip smiles?" I nodded. "Those are my specialty," she grinned. "Maybe next Saturday." And just like that, the bridge began to hold. Not strong, not finished, but standing. Spring came late that year, as if even the weather needed extra time to thaw. The invitation arrived folded in Emily's careful handwriting, tucked into a lavender envelope. It wasn't formal, no school letterhead. Just a note. "Spring Festival, Friday, 6 p.m. I'm in the last act. There's no special seating, but I saved you a spot. In the back row." I stared at it for a long time. The handwriting wobbled, a little unsure, like she didn't quite believe I'd come. But I did. The school parking lot was full by the time I arrived. I carried a folding chair just in case, and wore the same blazer I'd once worn to close million-dollar deals. Now it held a tiny daisy pin, a gift from Emily 2 months earlier, pressed into my palm after a gardening session. I found my seat near the very back, behind a line of parents standing on tiptoe. No one noticed me. No one clapped when I sat down. And I liked it that way. The stage was decorated with paper flowers, cardboard clouds, and an arch of balloons. The auditorium smelled faintly of glue, popcorn, and spring. Act after act passed, singing, dancing, skits about animals and recycling. I clapped for everyone. Then, in the final segment, Emily walked on stage, holding a small notebook, the one I gave her. She stepped to the mic, cleared her throat, looked into the audience. "This performance is dedicated," she said, "to the one who showed up." My breath stopped. Not just to the recitals or school fairs, but to the hard things, the silent Saturdays, the letters I didn't answer, the garden work, the weird pancakes. Laughter rippled. She continued, voice steady. "This is for the one who showed up, even when no one expected him to, even when he wasn't asked, even when he was scared." I didn't cry immediately. It came slowly, creeping from the corners of my eyes like a soft tide. "This is for my grandpa," she said, looking directly at me. "You weren't there at the start, but you didn't let that stop you from being here now. And I'm really glad you are." The audience clapped. I didn't move, because those words, were the answer to the question she'd asked a year ago. "Why didn't you come to my play?" This was the forgiveness, and it was enough. Later, as the crowd filtered out, Emily found me outside by the tree line. "You didn't cry too much, right?" she teased. "Only enough to ruin my tie." She laughed and hugged me. For the first time, it wasn't polite. It wasn't forced. It was real. 5 years later, I sat in the back of another auditorium. This time, the seats were larger, the lighting dimmer. The event was a scholarship banquet at Emily's college. She was graduating with honors in sociology. Her senior thesis had gone viral. The title, "Why Showing Up is the New Success." It was about time, memory, and the difference between providing and being present. She wrote about single parents, overworked professionals, kids who waited by windows, and grandparents who rediscovered meaning late in life. My name wasn't in the paper, but I was there, in every word. After the ceremony, she stood in front of her classmates, giving a final speech. "This degree," she said, "doesn't belong only to me. It belongs to everyone who showed up, late, yes, but with their whole heart." Then she glanced at me, and especially to the one who taught me that presence isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. The crowd clapped. Some students wiped their eyes. Back home that night, I found an email in my inbox from my old company. The subject line, keynote invitation. They wanted me to speak at the leadership conference. Topic, what makes a career matter? I almost declined, but then I remembered all the rooms I'd once filled with power and posture, how empty they felt now. So I said yes. The day of the talk, I stood on stage before hundreds of executives. I wore no tie. I brought no slides. Just one photo. Emily's childhood drawing of a house with a missing room. I used to think success looked like this, I said, pointing to the skyline projected behind me. Now I know it looks like this, I added, holding up the drawing. A home, with all its rooms filled. I told them about missed birthdays, unanswered calls, the nights I worked while my daughter played piano in the next room. I told them about the letters I wrote, and the day I cried over a forgotten Lego dragon. I ended with this. You can replace jobs. You can rebuild a career. But you can't rewrite a childhood, or retake a recital, or rehear your name said by someone who once whispered it in hope. Silence. Then applause, long and thoughtful. Afterward, as I stepped off the stage, someone touched my hand. It was Emily. She was there in the front row. You were amazing, she said. I brought someone. A young boy peeked from behind her. Her student, she explained. His dad worked 2 jobs and couldn't make it that day. Can he meet you? I knelt down and smiled. Of course. Then Emily turned to the room, to the crowd still milling around, and said clear and proud, "This is my grandpa." She took my hand, and we walked up the aisle, together.